All right, everyone, welcome into Up to the Second College Football, the Bowl edition. We are presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors, and we want to remind you we do it for the Saturdays. And Academy Sports and Outdoors says, hey, have fun out there with Academy. They do great work out there, and we appreciate them being a proud sponsor of this program. All right, so let's look at the college football playoff games. We'll look at those and maybe another bowl game that could or may not happen. Let's get to it. All right, guys, let's begin with the Cotton Bowl. Alabama and Cincinnati. The Bearkats coming in undefeated, the first group of 5 team to get into the college football playoffs. You got Alabama. Well, that's just what they do. They go to the college football playoffs, and they win when people expect them to lose. To talk about it, we are joined by Ryan Fowler, host of the game on 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. Ryan, how are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing great, and, get ready for the Christmas time, and Alabama fans at least have one extra present that they'll get a chance, hopefully, at the end of the season to be able to unwrap post-Christmas. So just a busy time of the year. I know it's a fun time of the year, but you're trying to get Christmas in, and then we'll be leaving just a few hours after opening presents, and we'll be on our way to Dallas, and kind of excited to get out there and see exactly what this team is going to take to Dallas and what kind of attitude they will be in our first chance to talk with those guys coming up on Sunday.
Ryan, was there ever a point where you thought, man, I don't know if Alabama's going to get in? They struggled to beat Auburn, but what an amazing fourth quarter, obviously. Georgia had been coming in with all this, praise and domination. Was there ever a point where you're like, they may not get in?
Absolutely. Listen, when I look at this Alabama team, my audience would tell you that I doubted this team probably from the get-go. When I look at an Alabama team, this team reminds me of some of the areas of an Alabama team, but not a complete team. If this team is able to pull off a national title, I think when you look at it from a standpoint of Nick Saban, I think it'll be his best coaching job. I think when you take this talent level that you lost going into the NFL, you try to replace it with youth. And I think you've seen that with the transfer portal with 2 guys making instant impact of just kind of telling you that the youth of this talent, Jamison Williams and Henry To'oTo'o. But to answer your question, I cannot even count on one hand the times that I said, this team just doesn't have it. They didn't have it. I mean, if you want to go to College Station, or if you want to go to Gainesville, or if you want to go back here against LSU and Arkansas, there was just times that this team did not remind you of an Alabama-type football team. And I'm not taking away from anybody that, was having success against Alabama. Those teams earned it on the field. But this team found a way in the last minute and a half. And I'm asking myself now, is that the real Alabama team? Is this really a new season for them, 2 games? Because the last minute and 30 seconds, they were able to kind of fix some things and overtime against Auburn. And then they came out with this knockout punch against Georgia. And it's like, okay, maybe they're making some strides in the right direction, and maybe they'll get focus and level of attention to detail that we really haven't seen in the first 12 regular season games.
Ryan, so from an A&M perspective, obviously I cover them, so that's the team I'm closest with.
Sure.
I look at that game against Bama, and I don't think that Bama looked bad. I've heard some people say that, but when Bryce Young throws for over 300 yards, 369 yards, 3 touchdowns, Robinson rushed for 147 yards, Jamison Williams 146 yards as well, and then you also see that they scored, 24 points in the second half after kind of a rough first half. I think it was just a colossal matchup. That being said, after that point, and then really the week before, there were some points where Bama didn't look all that good. So where were they failing? Or failing's not the right word. They only got 1 loss. But where were they lacking, I should say?
Well, take a look at this. Okay, when you look at Texas A&M, I think Jimbo found some areas against Alabama's defense that exposed them. Because I think if you looked at some of the things that they did against Alabama's defense there in College Station, that I think some of the other teams even attempted to try to do that. And, they really didn't run up against an elite passer. When you go throughout the season, I mean, you look at quarterbacks. So really not a strong list of quarterbacks. I mean, to me, when you look at just the quarterbacks that they went through, whether it's Tennessee or whether it's LSU or Auburn, I mean, they really didn't face an elite quarterback. Now, I think you could even put Stetson Bennett in that category of really not being an elite quarterback. But when you look back at the Texas A&M game, I just think the communication in the secondary was some things that was just like, and that was some of that unlike Nick Saban team that, we've kind of come to expect with this team, that you have areas of concern. You have things that you just don't do correctly. And I think that's what this Alabama team, to me, Texas A&M exposed Alabama in some of their weaker areas. And I credit Jimbo with finding some of those mistakes. And I think they were there prior to the Texas A&M game. He just took advantage and was able to, cash in with points.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on Desmond Ridder, the quarterback for Cincinnati, who is one of the guys not mentioned often, but really well respected?
But I think he can do some things to have success. I think Alabama's going to have to survive, a couple of those storms. When you look at it, how will this team be able to respond to that? The one thing you got to keep an eye on, and if there's a couple of areas that I think favors Tennessee. I guess I got thinking about Passer a while ago, and I was thinking about Hooker up there but a second ago. But Cincinnati, when you think about Alabama's secondary, when I mentioned a while ago they have not played an elite quarterback in quite a while, this is one of those quarterbacks that will be able to take advantage of some of the deficiencies in secondary. Well, let me add another element to this. They've got some issues at corner. They're okay, I think, in safety, but they've got some pretty major injuries. Josh Jobe having season-ending foot surgery, so he's done. Then you got Jalen Armour-Davis, who has been limited for like the last, 4 to 5 weeks, including the game against Georgia. So when you look at corner, they could really be in a mess at that corner spot. And you don't want to do that against a quarterback, like Dave Ridder. So that's the problem that I see that Alabama, could really get in trouble going up against a guy that's got an arm talent that, is pretty solid, that's going to be able to take advantage. Like I said, I feel pretty comfortable with safety, but I think corner is going to be an issue if Cincinnati can find a way to maybe get some of those mismatches. I mean, right now your proven corner is a true freshman by the name of Kool-Aid McKinstry. Other than that, you are really thin right now because of some injuries at that corner spot.
Hey, Ryan, last thing for you. Where does Bryce Young stack up with all the great quarterbacks that have been to Alabama and, again, doing this in his first year, redshirt freshman, doing his thing?
Well, in Tuscaloosa, you're defined by winning championships. Ask me this question in a couple of years, because if he's able to get one championship, then I think you start saying he's the best ever. Now, the Heisman Trophy certainly gets you a lot of points, but I have to go back and I start looking at quarterback, and I think about what Nick Saban wanted from a management standpoint. You look at A.J. McCarron, he won 2 national titles. This is the other part that's so crazy to say, but like a guy like Tua Tagovailoa, he never won a national title as a starting quarterback. Now think about that. Jalen Hurts didn't either. Never won I guess he started, but then he got benched at the halftime mark there. So when you look at Bryce Young, I think it'll be about the trophy cabinet. If he can put at least one national title, then I think he probably becomes the greatest of all time. With you look at talent, I think you could have that conversation now, but it's probably unfair. But Alabama really judges success based on a championship. And like I said, I think about that. I mean, it's kind of like that A-plus student who never accepts anything below a 97, because it's no longer an A-plus. 95 is unacceptable. 96 is unacceptable. It's 97 or above. And like I said, I think that's a little bit unfair, but that's the monster that Nick Saban has built, with these championships. I mean, listen, if this team loses in the playoffs, there'll be no celebration. Hey, we got into the college football playoffs. It will be a disappointment and will be considered, a failure from a standpoint, from an Alabama perspective. And I know that sounds crazy, but that's just what it is in Tuscaloosa.
All right, I was going to ask you that as my last question, but I do want to follow that up, because even though this is probably a year ahead of schedule, because I don't know if people thought this Alabama team, even though they came in with a #1 ranking, like this, I feel like this is a year above schedule, ahead of schedule, yet they could still win it all.
And here's the part that if you're an opponent now, College Station, the Aggies going to take a victory lap because they were able to take advantage of Alabama's downfall. But Alabama is going to be really, really good next year because all this youth that they had to play this year is, not going to be eligible for the NFL draft. Now, you got some guys that may declare to go into the NFL draft. But when you look at this Alabama team, there's a lot of guys that are going to be returning. So my thing to those teams who did not take advantage of Alabama being down, it's like, if you couldn't do that, when are you going to be able to do it? For Aggie fans, they celebrate the victory. They were able to take down Alabama. Jimbo Fisher became the first former coach to beat Nick Saban. And I think that's just something to be, that's a high achievement. But I think when you take a look at the other programs that did not take advantage, because I think Alabama's, like I said, it's going to be really, really good next year with a lot of these guys a year under their belt. So this was a down year. They're still there. But once again, if this team doesn't win a national title, it will not be considered a success.
Ryan, thank you so much, my friend, and enjoy the game. We'll catch up with you soon.
Hey, no doubt, man. Merry Christmas to all of you guys out there. Really have a lot of respect for the program, and we love the ties, whether it's Coach Stallings or Coach Bryant or any of the coaches. When you look at the ties with Texas A&M, Alabama, have a lot of respect for what you guys do out there, and really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
At Academy Sports and Outdoors, bikes for the whole family are just a click away. Buy online at academy.com with our free in-store assembly. Your next set of wheels, plus helmets, pads, and water bottles will be waiting for you at our in-store pickup counter. Get to the fun faster with our in-store pickup and free assembly at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
All right, so I was set to talk a little A&M taking on Wake Forest in the Gator Bowl, and that may still happen, but we had some news earlier today. So as of the recording of this show, A&M's practices have been canceled as they get ready for that bowl game because of COVID-19 in the locker room. So we turn our attention to our buddy Olin Buchanan, who I do a show with every morning here on TexAgs. But for Up to the Second College Football, putting your reporter hat on, just what are you hearing when it comes to COVID and the Aggies right now?
Well, pretty much what you just said. They did have to cancel some practice going back to last Saturday. And so where they're going from here is kind of up in the air. The guys were going to be going home for Christmas, going to be released for Christmas in I guess today or tomorrow. It's just kind of up in the air what's going to happen here. And there were games that were canceled all of last year. Some postponed. Frankly, it would seem that they would be able to play because it's usually about a week window. But if you have an entire roster that's dealing with it, you just don't know if you're going to have enough guys available.
So instead of breaking down this game, let's just look ahead real quick. How different this team's going to look in 2022. It'll have a different quarterback. It'll have not a completely different backfield, but the backfield will feel different. The offensive line might feel a little different. The defensive line is going to feel a little different. A lot of young players coming in.
Yeah, but that's just the reality of college football. And I still think that A&M, when you look at them, projecting for next year, I think they'll be better at quarterback regardless of who the starter is, whether it's Haynes King or Max Johnson. I don't think the freshman Connor Wegman will come in and start right away, although it's absolutely possible. Devon Achane at running back is, I think, a Heisman Trophy contender if he gets 20 carries a game. You're not going to be as good at tight end. You could be just as good, if not better, at receiver. And you could be actually better in the offensive line, even though you'll lose a two-time All-American, because two freshman starters should frankly be better as sophomores. You'll have more experience. You're going to have to replace the left tackle, but I think they've got plenty of guys that'll be ready to take on that one. So offensively, I think A&M projects to be better. Defensively, there's big holes that have to be filled in the defensive line. But you've got so many guys that were high-ranked recruits, and not just the guys coming in from this #1 recruiting class, but guys like McKinley Jackson that have been around, Fidel Diggs that have been around, Donnell Harris. good recruiting classes mean you have guys typically that are ready to step in. Will it be as good on the defensive line as it was this year? Probably not. But the question is how big the drop-off will be. I think you'll be as good, if not better, at linebacker, and they're going to have to move some guys around in the secondary. But for the most part, it looks like at this time all you're going to lose is Leon O'Neal. And there's plenty of guys back there. So I would expect your linebackers to be better. I would expect your secondary to be better. So I think when you project to 2022, you're looking at a team that could be, and quite frankly should be, better than the team that you're going to put out there, even though you're losing a lot of high-end talent. You've got a lot of experience coming back with a lot of guys that we project to be stars that are going to be having their chance to either come in as part of the 2022 #1 recruiting class, or guys that have been highly recruited and now it's their time to step up and make an impact.
All right, let's. OB used to be a national writer, so he's covered all the schools throughout the years and he's been to Michigan. He's been all around. So let's talk about some of these playoff games. Georgia, Michigan. Michigan, a team that's rising. Georgia was supposed to be this dominant force, and they have been. But I think it's kind of like the Mike Tyson effect, right? Alabama was able to show that if you can get offensive with them, you can take them out of a game.
Yeah. What would concern me if I was Michigan is you have a really good team in Georgia, a really good opponent that got embarrassed. And that's never the best time to play things. So you can look at it two ways. Hey, did Alabama expose Georgia and show you that they're beatable and how to approach them, or did they just piss off Georgia? Georgia doesn't have a great offense. They've won games through their defense. Alabama does have a lot of offensive weaponry. They got the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. Does Michigan have the same kind of offense that can put up those kind of points on that Georgia defense? And my question would be, I don't think they do. So does Georgia have the capability, because of its defense, to win a very close, well, maybe not close, but low-scoring game against Michigan? And as good as Michigan looked, and they looked outstanding against Ohio State, I would still think Georgia, because of that defense and the ability to run the football, would give Georgia, the edge, at least in my mind.
Let me ask you about the job that Jim Harbaugh did, a guy that changed a little bit of his recipe this year, and a guy that's gotten very close to being good but couldn't get through that hoop against Ohio State. This year, it all came together.
It did, and I always thought the criticism of him because he's overrated because he can't beat Ohio State. Look, I worked in the newspaper at Austin when Mac Brown couldn't beat Oklahoma. They lost from like 5 years in a row. Did that mean that they weren't good? Some of those years, one of those years they won the Rose Bowl, but they lost to Oklahoma. And then when they finally did, they won the national championship. Sometimes, it just takes a while to get your program to the same level of your opponent, especially one that's rolling like Ohio State has been. So Michigan has won 10 games or more, I think this is the 4th time under Jim Harbaugh. Yeah. So it's not like he's been doing a bad job. And there would be those that say, well, his job's in jeopardy. And I think, well, who are you going to hire that's better than him? And I think he proved it this year. You're not going to hire somebody better than him. He's a really good football coach that's taken longer than maybe some expected it would to get them on a level of national championship contender. But sometimes it's a slow process, especially when you're in a state like Michigan that produces some good football players, but not the high-level recruits in volume that a place like Ohio does, or Texas, or Georgia, or Louisiana. So Florida. So I think Jim Harbaugh's always done a good job, and he just finally has his program at the same level. The question is, beyond this year, how long are they going to be able to sustain that? Are they at the point now where they can compete with an equal playing talent level as Ohio State, or is this a 1-year build and now you got to start rebuilding?
Right. Let's do one last one. Alabama-Cincinnati. Do you give Cincinnati any chance at all against Bama?
I think you always give a team a chance, right? Now, how much of a chance? I think Alabama's going to win that game, and I think Alabama's going to win handily. I think when I see Cincinnati, it's obviously a team. There's some NFL talent on that team. There's not as much NFL talent as you're going to see at Alabama. I think when I see a team at Cincinnati that struggles to beat Tulsa, of course, Michigan did too. I believe it was Michigan. Maybe it was Ohio State. But anyway, when they struggle to beat a team like Tulsa, and they struggle to beat, Tulane, I think it was, they had trouble with. So anyway, they're undefeated, but they've been, talk about Cincinnati, there are several games that they were not impressive with against teams that are not high-level competition. Maybe they play to their competition. If that's the case, they better against Alabama, because Alabama does not have a great defense. It has a good defense. But can Cincinnati exploit any weaknesses in Alabama's defense? I don't know if they can. Do they have a quarterback capable of doing it? Yeah, but do they have the offensive weaponry across the board? I don't know, and I think that Alabama defense, that offense, if you can score like they did against Georgia, what are you going to do against Cincinnati? Right. So, and by the way, they're playing in a playoff, so they don't even have the advantage of maybe an opponent like Georgia last year not being as motivated for that bowl game as perhaps Cincinnati was. Now they're going to go out against an opponent with something to play for, more talent and something to play for. I think Alabama's going to win that game by 2 touchdowns or more.
Obie, thank you, sir.
You bet.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and everybody else.
Need a new grill? Academy Sports and Outdoors is the destination for your outdoor cooking needs. With our free in-store assembly and pre-assembled grills and smokers, buy online at academy.com and pick up in-store. So keep those grilling plans at Academy Sports and Outdoors.
All right, guys, let's get you ready for the Sugar Bowl here from an SEC perspective. You got Ole Miss taking on Baylor, and Matt Corral is going to be there for his squad, as you knew he would be there. Let's turn to Neal McCready from rebelgrove.com to talk all about it. Neal, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. In a world where, there are a lot of opt-outs, it's nice to see, and I know the Sugar Bowl is a big deal, so a lot of players want to play there, but it's nice to see Ole Miss taking on Baylor, because I think both of these programs really want this game, right? It means something to them. There are other programs that are hoping to be in the bowl, or in the college football playoffs, I should say. These guys want this matchup.
Yeah, in terms of non-playoff games, this is probably as appealing a game as there is because of one of the things you just said. Matt Corral was asked, did you ever think about opting out? And he said, no, never once crossed his mind. His teammates helped him get here. He wanted to be here for his teammates. And that sounds altruistic and sounded kind of corny, but I think if you followed his story over the last 2 years, it's 100% believable. He played through a pretty severe ankle injury this season. I don't know that we fully understood just how significant the ankle injury was that he hurt against Tennessee in early October. And he played through it the rest of the year, probably wasn't really even 80% or so healthy until maybe the Mississippi State game, maybe the Texas A&M game to some degree, but certainly not until late November. And he's going to play with his team, and it means something to these kids. There's no doubt. There's a whole bunch of super seniors on this team and a lot of seniors that are leaving, and then guys like Matt that are going to go pro after this game. And it means a lot to them, and it means a lot to the Baylor kids who, just won the Big 12 championship in dramatic fashion against Oklahoma State. And I'm sure they're geeked up for a chance at 12 wins. It'd be, for Ole Miss, I guess it'd be the first 11-win season in school history. So, yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I know Ole Miss is taking a ton of people down there. I'm sure Baylor's taking a lot of people over as well. So it ought to be for a non-playoff game, it ought to be a lot of fun.
Neal, this is yesterday's news, but I haven't spoken to you since. I was somewhat surprised that Matt didn't get invited to the Heisman. And I understand that there were some other names out there, and he was injured. But I still look at his numbers that he put up, and he was the engine that kept Ole Miss going and made them a possible 11-win team. Maybe not getting the invite, but he's still worthy of that conversation, is he not?
Yeah, I think he was, and I think he was on his way to being there until the fourth quarter of the Tennessee game when he hurt his ankle. And then, after that, he wasn't particularly from a numbers standpoint effective. And you know how this is, right? Because you see Texas A&M every week, and that's not meant as a criticism. I see Ole Miss every week. It's my job. It's your job. So you get up and your day is built around the A&M game, and you've got build up to the A&M game. You've got to get to the stadium or to the studio or whatever, and then you're watching the A&M game down for down because that's going to be the game you're talking about all week and writing about all week. And then the game ends, and you wait for press conferences, and you pick apart what Jimbo Fisher said and what the quarterback said and what a defensive player said, and here's what happened. You got an injury, and you got all this stuff. And by the end of the day, you look up, and you know all about Texas A&M Arkansas or Texas A&M Alabama, but okay, what happened in the Ole Miss LSU game? And what do? You go look at numbers, you look at highlights. And so you saw some numbers in the middle of the year from Matt that the numbers didn't pop. And so nationally, people thought, well, he fell off. The truth is, and you nailed it, the truth is nobody meant more to his team this season than Matt Corral. But well, he made my ballot. He wasn't at the top of my ballot. I voted for Bryce Young, who I thought won the Heisman by that fourth quarter comeback against Auburn and then his performance against Georgia. I thought he earned the Heisman and won the Heisman, and good for him. But yeah, but I get why Matt didn't get invited. I totally get why Kenny Pickett got invited and Matt didn't, if you're going just numbers. But listen, that kid, from a guts standpoint, from just a pure, I'm going to pick up a team and carry it all season long, yeah, he deserved to be there. But I understand.
Neal, what kind of a threat does Baylor pose?
Oh, they're real. I mean, these are two good teams. I mean, Ole Miss can beat Baylor. Baylor can beat Ole Miss. I mean, this is kind of, it's a kind of a throwback to the days when Lane Kiffin was an offensive coordinator in this league and Dave Aranada was a defensive coordinator in this league, and they're both awfully good at that job. And Baylor's going to throw some stuff at Corral. This is as healthy as Ole Miss has been since week one. It's the reason I like Ole Miss in this game, and I do think psychologically, I do kind of wonder if Baylor left a little bit on the field when it beat Oklahoma State. That was their cathartic moment. You make that stop at the 2-inch line or whatever it was to win this traumatic game, and you get a championship. Ole Miss didn't really have that. The Egg Bowl wasn't that for Ole Miss. So I kind of think there's a psychological edge, but listen, Baylor poses a lot of problems. They have two different quarterbacks that can do different things, and they are a very good borderline elite defense.
I was thinking Matt Corral, but Neal, I should say. Braylon Sanders here. He has been through it all with Ole Miss. What does this matchup mean for him?
It's kind of a cool ending to a career, like you said, that he came in right after Ole Miss and won a Sugar Bowl, and then he's been through probation and a scandal that took a coach out, and he's been through an interim coach who got the job and got fired, and Lane Kiffin and COVID. And I mean, he's kind of been through everything, all sorts of injuries, and Braylon's fully healthy for this game. And I'm sure this is it's kind of probably a storybook ending that I don't know that anybody could have predicted 2 years ago.
Neal, we appreciate you, sir. Happy holidays, and we'll talk to you after the Bowls.
Happy holiday to you and yours and everybody over there at TexAgs. Appreciate it.
All right, that does it for Up to the Second College Football, the Bowl edition. We'll see you guys next year, and special thanks to Academy Sports and Outdoors.